Alright, how's it going, guys, gals, gender fluids, whatever the fuck you identify as? Today, I'm going to talk about a few things in World of Tanks. A lot of people talk about a lot of aspects, but I think there's a couple of aspects that kind of just keep getting brushed under the mat. And so people watching videos and getting hyped and stuff and wanting to join the game, there's some really dirty stuff that you're not getting the dirt on. Alright? Some pretty low key shivvy stuff that you're gonna have to put up with in this game. And unless you're willing to put up with this, it's probably not worth playing, to be honest. Um, when I started playing, certain mechanics about the game are a lot different, and certain aspects of the game made better sense. And even though they've reworked some parts of the game, the things that they've left alone are kind of like this just underlying bad taste that you just can't seem to get rid of. All right, you can become whatever level of player you want to become in this game, but there's always this certain spectrum of crap that you just can't beat it. It's going to what I could call force your hand every time, and you're not going to have a choice in it. It just randomly happens, and sometimes that random happenstance just stays on you for game after game after game, where you're not actually able to do what it is you're trying to do. And so let's talk about that. What is that part of the game that you're signing up for that you don't know about? And this is possibly one of the things that keeps players who are very substandard from becoming confident players and not camping and being terrible players every match. And I think in general, a good portion of terrible players just aren't confident. All right? They're not confident. They don't trust the game. All right? And to have trust in the game to be able to perform, I think that has a really big impact on the mindset of the players and what they think they can and can't get done. So let's start off with, we'll go over a few things that they have reworked, okay? And then we'll talk about the negatives after. So what they did do is they did this huge thing, and they refaced the graphics of the game. Right on. Same old cake, but with fresh frosting, basically. And that kind of brought people back for a moment, but they didn't have to play for long to realize the reasons they left the game were basically still there. Okay, is they got that feeling pretty quick and they left, and you saw that because the server number peaked, for like a week and a half, and then it slowly just bled back off again. Flatlined back out to pretty much back to 5 and 8 and 10k, and maybe some nights we'll see 20k on as like maximum players, but I don't think we're actually even getting up to 20k in the evenings again. I think it's down around like 10 to 12k, maybe 15,000 players on for the NA server and the SA server combined, because it always shows you the few amount of people that are on over there. So why did players leave the game if they reworked it? Okay, they redid the graphics, they updated multi-core support twice, which was good. Got older hardware, being able to compete again and give you good frames. Bought some players who'd been maybe playing for a while that didn't have the money for hardware, bought them some time so they could keep playing. And what else did they do? They reworked the bush mechanics, the spotting mechanics. I think they're a lot easier to use now if you can figure out like what each little bush is worth to your tank, and if you can or can't fire from behind it, and how close you are or aren't. So those are kind of like some reworks that players who are paying attention can get good use of, and it's a good thing that experienced players could teach younger, or not younger, but newer players about. Which graphics rework, multi-core support rework, camo factor, spotting rework, all good things. Okay, so let's get into the dirty. So in the game, none of the firing, for one, is your own. So your skill as a shooter does not matter. It's nothing. Okay, if the shell's gonna hit, it's going to hit because the magical shooting generator decided that's where they would place the shot. Okay. And this is kind of the main problem with the game. This is where I think players become unconfident and just kind of throw their hands up, and they don't do anything. Okay, so in a real life, you aim your gun, you steady your hand, and you fire, right? And based on what you know about the minutes of angle of that shell, and to drop off, and if it's going to veer, and if you're shooting in the wind or not, which the wind isn't a factor in the game, so we won't talk about that, but we'll talk about, the shell drop off for every, 100 feet, 100 meters, 1,000 yards, whatever. There's going to be a certain amount of accrued bullet drop per se. And Watt doesn't go by that at all, okay? It's non-existent. And what you have in this particular game is dispersion, okay? And you have a circle, your reticle, all right? And within that reticle, your shot can land anywhere in it, okay? Regardless of distance. It could be 50 meters away, and your reticle can be shrunk down, and you'd think, okay, well, at 50 meters, theoretically, the shell should be either hitting in the middle or kind of high, right? Because it's a really short distance. Some shells happen to climb before they drop, and some shells end up to start dropping from the point, right? But let's assume that under 50 meters, you should be, if this was the top of the reticle, the middle of the reticle, and the bottom of the reticle, short distance shots, you should easily be in the middle of the reticle, right? Like, there's no reason you should miss, a 16-foot tall tank aiming at the center mass and shoot the dirt. And that's something you're going to have to put up with this game, because the dispersion values are pretty much meaningless, all right? If you're having a good game, you're one of the last few players alive, okay? And I'm explaining why this is annoying. You're one of the last few players alive, okay? And you notice, like, okay, well, maybe those guys over there, they're not exactly reacting very well, and you're in a tank with some mobility, right? Mobility, good gun handling, decent pin, and you're placing your shots. You pull up, you're behind your bushes, guy's broadside to you, and you aim, and you fire. Well, now you've done something, right? Now this little magical generator thing is, spirit fingers, doing its thing, and it decides where the shell's gonna land, right? Infinitely random where it's gonna land. Bottom, left, right, top, center, wherever, okay? And the crazy other part is, you would think that your shells leave the center of your reticle. They don't, okay? It's like you could have a rock just barely smidged into the edge of your reticle, or you're playing pull down, and just like maybe the bottom, like just the bottom of the ring is just in the dirt, just enough, just a smidgen, right? And you'll shoot the dirt. Okay, your gun that's literally physically above the ground ends up shooting the dirt because it's just in the bottom of your reticle, because your shell can leave the bottom of the reticle here and hit somewhere up over here through its flight trajectory. Like, you'll watch the shells in the game turn, okay? So what does that mean? All right? That means you as a player have to understand that because you have the good position doesn't mean you're going to get the good shot, because the game may or may not let you. And so now let's talk about the guy. He's taken his shot and the shell's flown. We know that it can leave anywhere in the reticle, land anywhere in the reticle, basically. And this guy's one of the last few players alive, and the game's potentially carryable, right? The cap isn't in danger. Say there's 1,500 damage left up. This guy's got 800 damage left on his tank, and he's like, all right, if I get these next 6 shots out, I could win this game. So he goes and does super hard work. He's getting down to that last 236 of his HP, right? He's got to land the next 2 shots to yank the game out from under their feet. And what happens? RNG hits you. Okay? You've outflanked them, you're on their back, you have the time to reload twice, right? And then say it's a 2-shot knockout, okay? You got to get 2 shots versus them hitting you once, and you're gonna win the game. And so you take your first shot, bang, you got the tank lit up, fully out in the open, and for whatever reason, the game thinks you're shooting for like way out there somewhere at the mountains 15 meters away. 15 meters, like say 15 kilometers, okay? It's shooting for the sky. All right, so you shake it off. You know, of course you're already lit because you're like, dang, I aimed that shot. Like I let the reticle zero, and then I fired, and the shell went. Okay, now you've fired. You've gotten yourself counter lit because maybe you didn't use that bush the way you thought you should. So now the guy that out HPs you having to be a two shot while you're a one shot, he's now traveling towards you, and you're thinking, well, what do I do? You fall back, you move back, you go grab some hardcover or something. And you're sitting still and you happen to out spot the guy again, and you shoot. Shell hits the ground like right next to his tank, you know, at say like a say 300-meter shot. Okay, say it's a 300-meter shot. You just booked back. You happen to have like good spotting on your tank. Maybe you're like in a, you know, like a fucking, excuse me. Maybe you're in like a, you know, like a 140 or something. It has, you know, somewhat decent gun handling, good pen, high shell speed. Allowed you to move back like that. Guy shows up, you bang the shell, the shots hit the ground. What do? Well, you're trying to leave, and this dude that's firing at you, like maybe just the top of your hatch was showing you just enough, right? The shot you wouldn't dare take, which I guess you miss all the shots you don't take. And he hits you, boom, you're done, game's over. And it's basically because the game just wouldn't let you, and that's kind of somewhat of the rigging they're talking about in this game. So outside of all the factors in the game, it's all about positioning, and when you shoot, it's just up to the gods. You know, it's just up to whatever fluke or strike of luck that you're having, that you're gonna actually hit and pin the target. And that's a whole nother factor. There's a plus or minus to your pen factor. So say you get 250 pen from 0 to 100 meters. All right, I don't know if this factor works at the 0 to 100, but I'm going to explain it the way I explain it. If someone else corrects me, then I'll update it, because I'd like to know better. But the way I understand it is you're going to fire your shell and you're going to get plus or minus 50 pen on your shot. And so the guy's angled, making his side armor out to, you know, like, say 260 or something. You ricochet. Okay? Makes sense. Another position, guys sideways, or you have a lower plate, and you fire and it bounces because for whatever reason for that shot you got minus 50 up to 50 millimeters of pen taken away from your shell. So not only are your shells not going where you're pointing them, you're not even getting the full pen factors that you're told that you're getting at each distance, which is yet another easily settable mechanic. For every meter flown, there's a certain amount of drop, a certain amount of velocity, you know, loss, and that's going to generate where the shell should be, right? Well, in WOT, that's wrong. Doesn't seem to work that way. And so, like, it's one of the last things that I'm having to get over in this game is that, you know, the shooting is not your own. And this took a nasty turn for this random shot placement coming out of like 9.14 update for World of Tanks. And what you got was like if you let your reticle aim, your dispersion value kind of actually mattered, okay? You know, you could sort of calculate like, you know, you needed to aim up a little bit if you're far away, if you wanted your shell to drop and like hit center mass, right? Makes sense. That's how a lot of people shoot their shell. It's what makes, you know, it's what naturally makes sense to a shooter. All right, someone who's plugged off a lot of shelves, they're going to try and adjust to what they know. And I think it's that right there that makes people not be confident players. Like, I don't trust the game when I shoot. I really don't. Like, I honestly think that my artillery pieces are more accurate, and I can trust the damage from those better than I can trying to take a one hit at the end of the game, knowing like my next 3 or 4 shots have to matter because I somehow managed to get myself into the position to try and help carry or assist and help push for the W. And I think if you're new to this game, coming into this game, I don't think it's worth wasting your time, credits, and money on, honestly. And the other thing is, like, the way they operate the game is always subject to change every update. So you could have a tank that was once great, and then they'll nerf it. And some tanks that come out are a bit too great, and they nerf it. So there's not much sense to how they balance the game. Armor in the game's almost useless, okay? Because you get 3 shell types, and you can pretty much just dab your 3 key and pin everything from the front, which negates people having to flank or look for shots of opportunity on turn to turrets and things like that. And so the whole shooting system's just kind of it's really kind of fucked. Um, and the environments are small. A lot of the environments, unless you get past like the first half of the game, the maps are just too populated to be able to really do a lot of flanking or shooting from cover without getting spotted. I mean, there's a couple really key places on each map that you can do that from, and that only becomes a factor as the game starts to wear on, okay? So how are you supposed to figure out where and what you're supposed to do if the shots you're taking as you're learning how to move about aren't doing their job? Um, so I think for a bit of a rant, I would just urge people not to play that game. Find something else to play, um, because as people leave, the developers will have to do something to incite people to come back. And the sad part is, each time they've had a chance as developers to do something in the game to benefit the masses as far as making the game more understandable or maybe even easier to play for new players, which they did a rework of the lower tiers. I just don't feel like they're making the proper moves. They keep doing things that make absolutely no sense. So aside from the shooting, you have not very many environments to play in. There's just not a lot of maps, honestly. And then the maps, you have a lot of them. I just don't feel like they're big enough, you know. So that's just kind of how I feel about the game, personally. And I've been playing for a long time. I'm an average Joe. I'm not a Unicom, which is fine. But I'm average. I have an okay understanding of how the game works. I know how to team play. I have a somewhat good handling on positioning. And the thing that irks me to death is when you get everything right at the end of the match, when it comes down to do or die time, you don't get to hit your target. It just doesn't happen. And you'll go through, a bunch of matches where you're missing like 6 or 8 shots in a row, okay? And, maybe some of your shots are being rushed, all right? But when you're hitting one of these moments where you're just getting the worst shooting luck out of the game, it costs you everything that you've been working on. It costs you your win 8, it costs you your wins, it costs you credits, and it costs you, mentally, because now you're frustrated. You're like, I did everything right to the best of my ability, and sometimes you get a good portion of matches perfect. You did everything you could. You pinned all of your shots. You're where the damage was. Your team just melted because you can't play the other 14 tanks in the match for them, right? And there's other, happenstances where like you'll get on a team where it's basically a bunch of players who are new, and you get a bunch of players on the other team who are very veteran and very high skilled, and that's understandable, okay? Because the way the matchmaker picks peoples, it picks random players with tanks to potentially make matches that are supposed to make sense. And it's like each time they make changes to the game, it just makes less and less sense. They water certain things down to try and make the game easier to play. But the thing that they keep skipping is they keep skipping one of the most important factors about the game, the shooting system.